Are joining us, the Cloudways Mavericks. That's myself, that's Peter and Jan, and you are also joining the wonderful, the awesome Dan Maby, the founder and trustee of the Big Orange Heart, and Laura Nelson, marketing manager at MailPoet, of which makes me imagine you all just creating poetry all day. It sounds wonderful.
We only communicate in poems.
You now need to make this rhyme. Actually, poems don't have to rhyme, do they? In your defense. So we're all good. Folks, today we are talking imposter syndrome. And this is based off of a blog that Dan did a little while back, which I would highly recommend you go and check out over on big.ht/imposter. And this was a letter to his imposter syndrome. So please be sure to check that out after this. That'll give you some context, but also allow you to write your own letter to your own imposter syndrome. Now, before we introduce each other, we're going to do a show of hands of who on this call is A, struggling with imposter syndrome, and B, struggling with it right now. There you go. So before we introduce everybody, you are in safe hands. If you struggle to show up online, if you worry about how you show up, how you project yourself, how other people see you, if you feel that you are not good enough, if your mental health is being affected by all of the above, then please do know that that is totally normal. And all of us, even though we're showing up on screen, are all silently freaking out. So you are in good company today. And let's have a conversation about that. First of all, let's do our introductions. We'll start with our guests. Laura, can you give us a little 60-second intro?
Sure. So I'm Laura. I work at MailPoet. We don't communicate in poems, but we do. We do offer a great email marketing solution for WordPress. I'm based in not so sunny Brighton in the UK, and I'm also a trustee at Big Orange Heart. Very passionate about speaking openly about mental health. I suffer with anxiety myself, and I think, if we all start talking about it a bit more, then it'll be a bit less scary.
Awesome. Young Dan.
Thank you, Lee. My name's Dan Maby. I'm the founder of Big Orange Heart. We are a registered charity that supports and promotes positive well-being and mental health within the remote working communities. And I'm just incredibly grateful again to have this opportunity to come and discuss a really important topic with the wider Cloudways community. So thank you very much.
Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Picha Neri, and I'm Italian, used to live in London for many years. Now I live in very sunny Spain, and I talk about UX all the time. And I'm also Cloudways Maverick with you, two wonderful people.
Jan, tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Jan. I'm based in Germany, and just as a side note, my imposter syndrome always kicks in when I have to speak English, so that's not my first language. Bear with me. I've gotten to use it over the years, but it still scares me. I run virtual summits. The WP Agency Summit is coming up in October this year, and I'm a proud Maverick too.
Yeah, now that I know this, I am going to pretend to be ridiculously offended by something you said, even though it's completely normal, just to make you feel really worried. No, I would never do that to you. I'm sorry. That's
I thought you were already.
I have to say that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. The presentation bit is a big flare up of imposter syndrome.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And my name is Lee. I am the host of the Agency Trailblazer podcast. You can check that over on agencytrailblazer.com, where, like Laura, Dan, and everyone on this call, I really believe in mental health and share a few personal journeys on there. So if you just tap in the word anxiety or depression, you can pull up a few episodes on that as well, just for some extra hearing. And also, before we carry on, can I encourage everybody to follow Big Orange Heart on the socials? We will put some banners up throughout this call so that you can go follow them. You can tweet about them. You can join their surveys, everything else like that. But before we do that, I'm going to crack on with our opening question. And Dan, I'd just like to start with you, buddy. You are the sort of person who puts yourself out there. You're showing up with the WordPress London community, so you're showing up streaming online live. You did, or I think you were heading up the actual WordCamp meetups, weren't you? The proper events in London itself. You run your agency, you run a charity. A lot of what you do means that you are that kind of central character that everybody looks to and looks up to and looks to for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty scary stuff.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how that makes you feel.
Honestly, terrified. It really is. I feel equal parts terrified and blessed to be able to be in the position that I'm in. And it's been through nothing special. I've just simply I've had opportunity to be able to put myself out there, and I would really encourage anyone in the community to open up, have conversations. If you're looking to get into a position where you can start to have more exposure, then you have to be able to take those steps. But of course, this is where the imposter syndrome really can kick in. And I mean, I can go way back to almost a decade now, when I first had a conversation with Keith Devon at the WordPress London meetup, who was the original organizer of the meetup.
Yeah, I remember very well.
I turned up at that first meetup, the first time I'd ever been to a WordPress event, and I'd come straight from work where I was actually an IT director in the city, and I was all suited and booted, and I turned up for this WordPress meetup just in the most, it felt totally inappropriate the way I was dressed, because everybody else there was much more relaxed. It was a completely different environment to what I was used to. I was very much used to that kind of business networking type community. I was, I'd say I was there in my shirt, my tie, my jacket, my suit.
That is kind of adorable that you did that, by the way, just saying.
But I'd come straight from work, and that was the environment that I was used to, and that was what I was expecting. I didn't know any difference, and I turned up there, and in that first event, Keith had said, "No, is there anybody willing to to get involved and be part of this?" And I actually sat there. I hadn't spoken to anybody else, and I stuck my hand up, and it was one of the most terrifying moments, because it was, it meant I was having to put myself out in front of this audience that I just didn't know, these people that I just didn't know. And but I'm so glad I did, and it really took a moment of stepping out of my comfort zone.
You know what, Dan, it's so interesting that you say that, because I remember those meetups very, very well. That's where we met. And the imposter syndrome that I felt at my very first few WordPress meetups, you have no idea, because I didn't know anything about coding or web design at the time. And so I was just like, oh my God, all these people are so clever. They know about code and I don't know anything. And I'm like, And I remember one of the first people to make me feel comfortable, well, you, Paul Smart, and Rob Cubbon. I bumped into Rob. That's where I met Rob Cubbon. So, everybody feels that. I mean, for me to hear that you felt like that, you became one of the organizers. You were one of the big. I was like so in such admiration of you. So it's so interesting that everybody has it, guys. Everybody has it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's an interesting thing that you bring this up, Peter, because Heinrich just had a very interesting comment that Lee just showed on the screen. And thanks for bringing this on, Lee. This is a really big one. Interesting to know how any of you could possibly have any imposter syndrome. I think that's where the issue is, because you put people who you consume content from on a pedestal of some form without knowing how they feel inside, or how they feel before they hit the go live button, and while they're preparing what they want to say. And maybe when you are working on a project, you don't exactly understand how to build that thing that you just got the project for and quoted 10K for or something, and you don't know how to make it happen. That's a big one, when I think everybody gets imposter syndrome from time to time.
What would you say to that, Dan? Because I kind of think that sometimes, imposter syndrome happens because you want to improve. You are aware of your limits and you want to get better. So in that sense, it's actually not completely a bad thing.
No, not at all. I would actually argue that imposter syndrome is a good thing. It's a horrific feeling. It's a horrible thing to have to go through. But actually, if you get to a stage where you can recognize it and take steps to start to manage it in a healthy way, it's actually a really good thing, because you're questioning yourself. And it's right to question ourselves. For us to question, can I do this? Should I? How do I do this? They're really healthy questions to ask. And
there's no growth without those questions.
Absolutely. I've given talks many times on imposter syndrome, and a lot of them have been shaped around the link that's actually on screen there. It's an open letter written by myself to my imposter syndrome, and it's some of the issues that I constantly hear my imposter syndrome ask me or throw at me, and they're each one. I think there's five. I think there's 5 items I've listed on there, and each one of them is just 4 simple words that my imposter syndrome throws at me, and they can stop me in my tracks. They can stop me dead. They're really quite challenging issues to overcome. But the fact that you are having those questions and that you are going through those processes to try and work out how to deal with them is a positive thing.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting what you said about how a picture you pointed out that Dan was nervous about going to a WordCamp and then ended up running one. I was in exactly the same boat. My first WordCamp was WordCamp Europe in Vienna. Couldn't have got much bigger than that for a taste of.
That was brave. That was brave.
I had no idea what I was walking into. And I felt the same. I work in marketing, and at the time I worked with all developers, and I was like, I don't belong here at all. I've got no idea what's going on. But in a way, that experience and those sort of feelings of doubt pushed me to take control of the situation. And my control of the situation was to get involved, to start organizing. And it's like, well, actually now, I know how it works. I belong here. I'm part of this. I can do it.
Is that like your go-to reaction, Laura, when you feel imposter syndrome kicking in, that you just attack it full steam?
No, not always. That was a very unusual reaction, I would say. But I do try to turn it into a positive and learn from it where I can, and try and it seems weird, like try and make the most of that feeling or turn it into a positive. So I did this with my anxiety as well. So I did a talk on dealing with anxiety at WordCamp Europe in Serbia, and again, it seemed like the most crazy thing to do. Like, when you have anxiety, why on earth would you do probably one of the most nerve-wracking things you possibly could do? But it was a way of taking control and trying to turn it into a positive. Like, I've been suffering. I found some good ways of dealing with this. There are other people out there who are suffering too. Let's try and use this for good rather than it just being a negative on myself.
I'd love to share a story of my experience. Agency Transformation 2019 event. I did not feel too much imposter syndrome. Sorry, I'm dealing with my anxiety by playing with an Allen key. It hadn't kicked in that much. I felt nervous. I felt worried, but I also knew that family were coming. Essentially, everyone in the community, you're all my family. It was wonderful, and it was going to be amazing. And I knew everyone would be kind if I really screwed it up. So I wasn't that worried at that point. Although about a week and a half before the event, I suddenly got a random text from a guy in Chicago who said, "Hey, I've just found out about your event. It looks pretty cool. Are there any tickets available?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a few left. Come over." Thinking he would never come over. And he's like, "Great, I've just bought the ticket. I've just bought the flight. I'm on my way over." And I'm thinking, oh my word. I'm running an event in my local church in Wellingborough. A guy has decided to travel from Chicago, spent countless amounts of money doing all of that, presumably, and is going to rock up at my church wondering what the hell I am playing at with this pokey, weird church building, trying to put on an event when he's probably used to these amazing corporate events out there in the States with their massive convention centers and their special effects and videos and countless people there. We were only going to have 80 people in the room. He's probably used to hundreds of people in the room. For the whole week then, I was freaking out. If you don't know who it was actually Termageddon. It was Hans from Termageddon, who thankfully was freaking lovely and told me it was one of the best events he'd ever attended, which shocked me.
Was it him?
It was him, yeah.
I remember meeting him there. The guy from Chicago was like, "You what? What have you done?" But I just twigged now that it's Hans. Oh dear. Because I'm old. That's why. But
it's funny though, isn't it? So I created just from that one event that set my anxiety levels through the roof, because what I'd I had I was projecting onto other people the perfection that I thought other people would want to see, and I'd forgotten that people don't want to see perfection. They just want to meet other people, and they want to take away something of value, which is why nowadays when I show up on these lives and I know I fluff up my wording and I go all over the place, I know that it doesn't matter, and I don't feel as anxious about it anymore, because as long as people are getting value and they're learning from what we're sharing and they can apply something, that's all they care about. And they skip all the ums and the ahs. They don't even notice them. They don't even register them. They're just grateful to hang out with all of us guys and learn from each other and have a conversation. So that's sorry, I know it's a little bit deep there, but that was just kind of one experience I had.
I mean, perfectionism is one of the biggest issues around imposter syndrome. It's that you're not good enough. That internal voice of you're not good enough, and you're trying to get to, perfectionism it's an enemy of completion. Don't aim for perfectionism.
So true.
Can you say that again? That was a Mr. Miyagi moment.
It is an enemy of completion, because you want to ensure that you're never going to complete a project if you're aiming for perfection all the time. Apply the 80-20 rule. Just that is your friend when it comes to that inner critic voice of you are not good enough around your imposter syndrome. Look at it. How can I move forward if I'm constantly telling myself I'm not good enough, and I'm not, this isn't, I need to make that better, I need to make it better, I need to make you find yourself, you will never get to that point where you get to completion.
That's a really big one for me. This is super relevant for me, and I'm a recovering perfectionist, but very often relapse, and it's crippling. It cripples you. It literally stops you in your tracks. I have a project, or two projects right now that are haunting me because I have to let go of perfection, and they just never finished otherwise. So it's a really big one. I think quite a few people have this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I spell enemy wrong with an M and still made it live. I've now changed it.
The German didn't know the word, so he asked privately.
Jan messaged me privately saying, "What's an enemy?" So it wasn't actually a pun. I actually spelt it wrong.
And say, it'd be interesting, how many of us identify as a perfectionist as well, because I'm on the same journey as well of trying to I don't know what to call it, get over that, or I guess it's more like trying to take pleasure from the journey to completion rather than just focusing on getting it done perfectly first time. So try and enjoy correcting things or making things better, or just trying to take pleasure from the process rather than stressing out about doing it right next time.
That's a good one. I have a blog post that I need to write for a pretty big website, and the draft is due tomorrow. And for that, I have to do a video of one of my website backends and explain what's going on there, why I've built this, the way I've built it. And there was a bug in that website, and I spent today and yesterday fixing that damn bug so that I could create a proper video for that post instead of writing just a 3,000 word post, which is the minimum requirement. Instead of spending time on the work that mattered, I spent 2 days bug hunting. That's now that I'm saying it is insane. But that's what imposter syndrome did to me, because I was afraid that the post wasn't good enough and that I wouldn't make it onto this really big website that I want to be on for ages. And it's just maybe I should have told somebody earlier.
Is this Forbes, by the way?
But
it's Conversion XL. It's close to Forbes.
You're really getting into catastrophizing here, aren't you? It's that inner critic, and it really is that you're going to fail. It's that message that your imposter syndrome will attack you with, and you're looking for the worst possible outcome from that situation. And of course, these are just thoughts. This isn't the reality of the situation. This is just the way you're thinking. And of course, we have the opportunity to change those thoughts and to move beyond that worst possible outcome.
And it's interesting how the mind rationalizes those stupid actions, because I was just thinking, if I fix that bug, the website will load faster, it will convert better, yada, yada, yada. But it distracts me from the task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just self-sabotage. That's the thing. And the funny thing, when that happens to me, and when I realize, because now at least 2 things I've managed to do recently. First of all, what you just said, Dan, about it's only a thought and a thought can be changed. I used to think that my thoughts governed me and I couldn't change them. And now recently I've learned, it sounds stupid, but really it was such a big achievement for me to finally realize, actually, if there's one thing that you can change is your own thoughts. So if you learn to to change the tracks that your thoughts are in, because obviously we follow the beaten path, don't we? It's normal. But if you just learn to change the track, go to a different track, then you can revolutionize that. And the funny thing is about the perfection is that UX is the opposite of perfection, because you want to get something out as soon as you can, try it out, test it out, ask people, and then go back and perfect it. So why be perfect? It's actually being perfect is counterproductive. We don't work. I mean, those of us who work in a digital world, which is generally, it's not like printing a book. I used to work in print before. That had to be perfect. There was no room for testing, but now we can't. It is all about testing. So people, let's forget about perfection. Enemy of completion.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that I've noticed many times, I will purchase valuable products from awful looking websites. And I do this a lot. So I will, the copy will be compelling because they'll speak to the problem that I have. They'll offer a solution to that, and I will go ahead and purchase. And I will subconsciously recognize that the site is pretty poor and that image over there is quite garbled. It's obviously low quality image, etc. But that doesn't actually really matter to me, because I actually am going after the value, or I'm reading the blog that's available to me, whatever it is. I'll engage with a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily look great, but there is value there. So I'm not saying that we should all put terrible stuff out there, of course, because we're all proud of what we do and we want everything to look great. But we also have to understand, I think, at some point that no matter what something looks like, or no matter how perfect, quote unquote, that we feel it is, people don't really look at that in the grand scheme of things. They're really looking for the value. They're really looking for the lesson. They're really looking for community. That whatever is going on, whatever they're there for, is why they are there, and they're not necessarily bothered about the ums and the ahs on your recording, or the odd spelling mistake here or there, or whether or not the color green works well.
The number of hours I've spent getting the ums and ahs out, and sorry, Laura.
Carry on, Laura.
Oh no, I was just going to say, half the time they wouldn't even notice. It's only you who notices your errors, and that's taken a long time to learn. I wouldn't say I'm there yet. I'm still struggling with that, but I've learned not to stress out about a tiny typo or a spelling mistake in a blog post, because I can go back and change that really quickly. And most of the time, I'm the only one who'll notice.
Absolutely.
It's another one of the key issues around imposter syndrome, embarrassment, isn't it? It's that, what will others think? Again, it's that inner critic, it's that inner voice asking, before you publish this, what will others think? And nobody wants to be embarrassed, but of course, if it comes to a point where that embarrassment is stopping you from being able to move forward, then of course you need to approach it, and you need to work your way through how can you move forward. If it's going to paralyze you to a point where you're not able to actually produce something because of that potential embarrassment, then of course there's an issue there that needs to be resolved.
Yeah.
Because how do we notice, though? Sorry, Peter. How do we notice when we are stopping ourselves? Because I certainly didn't in the past 2 days.
I think procrastination is one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest ways of and that's a really difficult one, because it can be quite difficult to notice procrastination. But of course, if you're in that situation where you're spending 2 days bug hunting, and that's not actually getting you to the end goal, it's not actually helping you move that end goal forward or get to that end goal, then of course you need to need to be questioning yourself, and that's where inner reflection and looking and having the ability to ask yourself those questions, it comes with time and it comes with practice. This is you need to actively practice these things. For a lot of individuals, they don't just naturally come. Procrastination can be the easy route to take out of a difficult situation.
Because you feel like you're busy, so you feel like you're being productive, but you're not really. You're just self-sabotaging. It's all you're doing.
Like a 2-day bug fix.
But that bug is gone by now.
Yes. Jan, I do have a question for you. So when Jan and I first met, I actually met Jan off the back of I believe it was your first online summit. So you did a huge online summit in the WordPress space, 2015. Yeah, 2015. Yep. So my podcast launched within weeks of your summit, and that's how I met you. And you had approached many people. You'd got many big names as far as I was concerned. I don't know how you did it, but you got loads of big
I don't
names.
know either.
Well, this is my question is, how did you overcome that? Because let's put that into perspective. You were somebody that no one had ever heard of necessarily. Yep. You were building your business. You'd come up with a great idea, but you didn't know if anyone was going to buy it. And you were approaching some of the WordPress industry heavyweights. How did you come over? Well, yes, it was much wider than WordPress, but I only remember the WordPress bit because I was so into it back then. I started the WP Innovator podcast. Remember, it was all about WordPress. But so, how did you get over that? What did you do to communicate with those people and ask them onto your summit? How did you get over the imposter syndrome, or did you just feel like they'll want me?
Not at all. Not at all. What helped was I had a really good mentor. So a friend of mine had just launched his Virtual Summit training program, Naveed Moasses, Virtual Summit Mastery. And he just ran a summit that grossed in like 80 grand or something for his first event. So he had 88 speakers on it, and he really had a good process. Wow. And he was teaching me that process essentially. So I knew that at least I had an idea what I was doing. I did it for the first time with these events, but I knew what I had to do to make that event somewhat a successful event. And then I just reached out to people like Rand Fishkin from Moz, Ollie Gardner, Jason Cohen from WP Engine. I just tweeted at them because I didn't even think about it too much. I figured what should they do? They likely say no, and I'll find somebody else who's going to be on the summit, and it's not the end of the world if Rand Fishkin doesn't want to be interviewed by somebody who nobody has ever heard of. That's nothing groundbreaking. So I figured my stakes were pretty low there, and I didn't have much to lose by approaching them. So I just went out for it and just tried my luck.
I love that. What have you got to lose?
That's the best possible attitude. The best possible attitude.
I think, but as event organizers, as people that need to bring other people together, it can be really difficult. It can be really dangerous when we start to put individuals on a pedestal and start to think that they're outside of our ability to be able to communicate with. At the end of the day, we're all people.
Because they probably feel imposter syndrome as well. Because there's one other in that blog post, Dan. There's another one that I feel very close to me, which is you're a fake. And I think that so many of us feel that because, especially in our industry, everybody or most people seems to have come from something else. Like I feel huge imposter syndrome because my background is as an art historian. So then I became a graphic designer, and for so many years I was like, oh, I'm a fake. I'm just making this all up. I don't belong here. And then finally, after years, it was like, okay, well, I have achieved a few things here, so maybe I do, maybe. And then I started doing something completely different again, which was UX. So it was like, I'm an imposter again. And so that thing, I'm a fake, is just so big. And I'm in a sort of mastermind group for UX people. And there was someone in there who was absolutely saying exactly this, saying I feel like a complete fake because I come from a visual design background. I was saying, me too. But the reality of it is that you're all the stronger for it because it means that you have a much wider experience that feeds into what you're doing now. You don't start from zero. You have much more to build on, and that possibly makes you better. But also what it does is that, at least in my case, it makes you devour and learn and absorb and never stop in wanting to improve. And I guess that's the side, one of the sides that can be turned on its head, isn't it? That actually, in that sense, it makes you better, because it means that you go, okay, I need to improve this, I need to, and therefore you never stop learning. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant, but that's what I meant. I think that there's the I'm a fake is another really big one, and I think that for that reason, I mean,
yeah, I mean, this is the unworthiness, isn't it? It's the, I'm unworthy. I'm a fake. That again, our imposter syndrome, shouting that at. I've had that shouted at me many times, and it's it's about creating unrealistic expectations, isn't it? Your mind is creating these unexpected, and again, they're thoughts, and we control our thoughts. We have the ability, then our thoughts aren't the reality of the situation, and have that option to change that, as we've already mentioned.
Yeah, the I'm a fake feeling is the biggest one for me. I'm constantly like, they're going to find me out any moment now. I've no idea what I'm talking about, which isn't true. But I think when I'm in those like sort of darkest moments, I'm like, oh, they're gonna find me out. They're gonna know I've no idea what I'm talking about. I'm making this up as I go along, and I have to I have to train myself like not to think like that, and I do a few things to try and stop me, or like to remind me that I do know what I'm talking about, and I am worthy of having a job and being paid and having friends and like living. But I do find it useful to kind of like create a little folder of achievements, and when I'm really feeling like that, I look back and be like, oh, actually, yeah, I did that really good thing.
I love this. Yeah, reminds me of what David Goggins is doing. He's a 300-pound guy turned Navy SEAL. He was in a really bad upbringing. Excuse me. So his dad beat him, and his mother was working all the time, and he had a really tough childhood. And then he became a Navy SEAL, crushed the pull-up world record, I think 4,030 in 17 hours or something like that. And he's this really, really tough guy now. And what he said is that he has this cookie jar in his mind. So similar to what you just said, Laura, he takes notes of remarkable achievements that he has, puts them into his cookie jar, and when things get hard, he just takes them out of the cookie jar and looks at, hey, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing too, and that always pushes him forward. I like that.
We're all really bad at celebrating ourselves. I think, I don't know, especially British people, it's seen as like a really an unattractive trait, being like bragging about yourself. And I think that's what stops us in our mind from thinking positively about things that we've achieved. But it's not that you're not bragging, you're simply recognizing that you have achieved something, or you've done something really, really good. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we should all do it a bit more. Openly.
Self-deprecation is a national British sport, and unfortunately I became a champion at it over 20 years in the UK. But yeah, it's a very typical national trait that you've got, for sure.
Yeah, there are a few ways to look at trying to tackle this and trying to support this. And something we do within Big Orange Heart is we have what I call life groups, as well as our one-to-one mentor calls. And today I've actually had to get onto a call with somebody I trust within that community to be able to talk through some of the big challenges that I'm facing, specifically in relation to I have imposter syndrome in relation to heading up this charity and delivering what we're doing across this charity. And it's today I've really tackled for the last few days it's been very much on my mind, this issue this issue of imposter syndrome. And I had to get onto a call and sit there for an hour and just talk through various things. And what that individual did was reminded me of several of the big positive things, the things that have happened, and the changes that have happened because of it. And it's very easy to forget those things and get very, very focused on the negatives. So really just encourage people to find safe groups, find safe individuals that they can have those conversations with. And if you're listening to this right now and you don't have that, then please do join us, bigorangeheart.org/join. And so we run life groups that are intended to be those small trusted circles that you can turn to and have those conversations with.
bigorangeheart.org/join. Now, with regards to what you were talking about, Laura, about encouraging yourself, one way that people could actively encourage themselves is take a look at the past week's worth of emails. And I'm sure perhaps there's some horrible emails, but focus in on the emails where you've actually achieved something. So one of the ways I do this is I'll look at my inbox and I'll see that I completed the next phase of a project, but then I'll focus in on that and I'll say, okay, I completed that phase of this project. Let's expand a little bit more on this. This is a company that employs 50 people. These 50 people have this huge problem and they've entrusted me to help solve that problem. We've achieved phase 1. I've got positive feedback from these people. This is a significant achievement. I need to be proud. I need to allow myself to celebrate that phase 1 is now complete and that all these 50 people have put their trust in me and I have shown that I am trustworthy and I have done this. And I guarantee everyone who is watching this, who builds websites, who does design, who provides some form of service, can look at the last week and see that you will have achieved something over the course of this week. As I look at the screen, I look at Laura, who is a trustee of Big Orange Heart, who gives time to help countless thousands of people around the world with their mental health. That's freaking awesome, Laura. Dan, you have started something that is incredible. Despite the fact that you struggle with imposter syndrome, you've put yourself out there and created a charity that is touching thousands of people's lives. Those I know, I've heard a lot about those circles, that they have saved lives as well. So that's incredible. You've got Jan, who has created countless summits which have allowed people to completely change the way that they do business and have a better work-life balance. You have Peacher. Again, Peacher, you're freaking awesome. You have taught people you've taught developers to become designers. You have helped people's businesses and you've grown beautiful communities. So it's really easy for me to be able to say that about you guys as I look at you all. And we should practice that. I really believe we do this internally in our business, where we try and celebrate each other's successes on a weekly basis, because it is so easy to point out what went wrong with a project and this narky email we've received off a client that's really upset me. So that's what expanding on what Laura's saying, that's what we try and do to ourselves and to each other. I'll drop an email, not an email, in Teams. You can celebrate your team, like your team members, and we've got a joint chat, and I'll put Lee is celebrating, I'll tag the relevant person in and what it is that we're celebrating, and then everybody knows about it across the entire company. That's Microsoft Teams. If anyone's looking for a Slack alternative for their business, highly recommend it. So sorry, just a little bit of waffle from me there.
Well, no, Lee, and don't forget yourself. I mean, obviously, you've impacted the lives of thousands.
That's all I was digging for, mate.
It's your turn now. Your turn.
We need to own our achievements. Don't we?
Amen.
We need to own our success.
Yeah.
It's so important to take that ownership and to celebrate it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to overlook that, and we talked about it already. That it's if it's that age old that bad news will travel fast, whereas positive news it just doesn't travel, does it? And we need to ensure that we take ownership of that, to ensure that we do recognize the positivity of what we're doing.
Yeah. So that we can turn the self-torture into self-nurture and self-growth. Because I really feel strongly that I'm going to say something that's going to sound weird, but I actually trust more the people that do have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Do you know what I mean? Because that means that the honest people who look at, I'm not saying that you should have it to the way where it's, an illness almost and it cripples you. But what I'm saying is that if you have imposter syndrome, in most cases, you are someone, as we were saying earlier, who just wants to keep learning and improving yourself. Because let's not forget that there's the opposite of imposter syndrome, which is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is much worse because it's those people who believe they just know everything they need to know about a subject, and they don't, because no one does really. And that's that is much more dangerous than having imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is generally dangerous for you if you don't turn it into a positive, whereas the opposite of imposter syndrome is dangerous for others around you. So I think also imposters, all of us who suffer from imposter syndrome, are in very good company as well, aren't we? There's so many greats that you list in your blog post, Dan, as well.
Yeah,
I find that thought quite comforting too. That when I feel imposter syndrome kicking in, I try to remind myself that I'm not the only one, and that probably everybody who's striving for a big, hairy, audacious goal is dealing with imposter syndrome, while I am as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Karen, the thing I like about, I think it was you were saying, Petra, a second ago. Well, someone was saying about the opposite of imposter syndrome being the overconfident, brash kind of person that you just can't relate with. So if you show up with your imposter syndrome as a badge of honor, we're all going to relate to you because you are therefore human, as opposed to rocking up with, I am always right, everything I say is gospel, you follow me and I will, and then we can go into the whole 10x your income and all the other things that all these people say that just drive me insane, and they act like they are the bee's knees, that they know everything and that everything they say is absolute truth and you must follow it to the letter and also pay for all of their courses, because that drives me insane. And that, Dan, isn't it, is a fake it till you make it mentality.
Is the worst. That fake it till you make it expression, we should scrub it from our vocabulary.
Amen.
It is so dangerous. It does so much damage to every individual. Who wants to be fake? You're literally saying, I'm fake. And it's so flimsy. It's so see-through when you're trying to fake that and trying to. I get that when you're, if you're starting business, it's hard. There's a lot of things that need to be worked through. But it does take time. It takes effort. It takes energy. You cannot take a shortcut. There are no shortcuts, and that fake it till you make it is exactly that. I'm a huge advocate of scrubbing that expression off the business vocabulary.
Absolutely. With regards to business, I did the wrong thing years ago where I tried to create an image of my business where we were bigger than we are, that we were able to provide 24-hour support because we had a global team at X, Y, and Z. And I created that image. Two things happened. The first thing is that clients did not get the service they were expecting because I was clearly not that big company that I projected. Thus, I got found out. And the second thing that happened was I learned to be ridiculously honest about my business, and I have signed the biggest contracts ever, being the honest business person who has. I have a small team of people. We sleep and eat and have family life, so we're not available 24 hours a day. And yet huge corporations have entrusted us with multi-thousands of pounds worth of contracts and retainers because they know we care about what we do. We're good at what we do. We're honest. They like us. They vibe with us. We're real. We ain't fake. And they just want to align themselves with us in our journey, regardless of the fact that we're not a global corporation with thousands of people that I used to think I had. Well, not thousands, but hundreds of people that I was trying to project. Oh, yeah, we're huge. We partner with everyone. Yeah, we do everything.
We've actually had it at the events. For a long time now. We've encouraged attendees of our events to be honest, to be open about the situation, because it's really easy when you're going into a networking event to think you've got to wander in and say, yeah, business is doing fantastic. We're making sales. We're doing incredible. We're through the roof. We're 10xing and all of that kind of language. But actually, if you turn up and say, actually, I've got some challenges. I've got some, some issues that I wouldn't mind discussing or going through. We've seen incredible stories come out of those honest conversations in those events, as opposed to those fake fronts that so often get put on when we head into these events. Now, I'm not saying turn up and start opening up your heart and every person. But let's look at how can we have that more honest approach to business growth and to business partnerships and business development.
Yeah, because by being like that, you're only closing yourself off to other opportunities anyway. You know, you're not going to think of, if you've got some piece of work that your business can't do or you don't have capacity for, you're not going to think, oh, I'm going to give it to that person I met at this event who's doing so well in business, are you? You're obviously going to give it to the person you think is most suited, but also like most deserving in a way. And
do you think though that sometimes going on, like when turning up and being honest, when someone says how are you, my defense mechanism often, because I don't have the energy to actually tell you how I am, is to say that I'm fine, because I feel like if I tell you what's really going on, it's just going to drain me. I'm going to have to engage in a conversation about it and bring everything up that I don't really want to talk about, etc. So I think often that happens as a defense mechanism, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And one alternative way of doing it, and it takes a bit of practice again, is to respond to a question with a question. And it's a very politically and politician style answer, but you're not giving a direct answer. You're turning it around, and if you're not in the position to be able to honestly answer it, then look for alternative ways to respond. And be prepared, because often if you're wandering into these events, into these situations, you're highly likely to be asked that question. So think about having a response prior to walking in, because it can be very mentally taxing walking into these situations where you need to start thinking about how to respond on the fly. Whereas if you're going into a situation where you're quite likely to be asked that question, then be prepared.
I don't know why, but I've got a Disney tune in my head going, be prepared, going on in my head right now. I don't think that's imposter syndrome. I think that's OCD. Not OCD, ADHD or something going on now. My brain's got all sorts going on in. Sorry, I just brought the tone down.
No worries.
I remember, I think it was, no, not for long.
When you got Pete,
not when I'm in the room. Exactly, not when I'm in the room. So I remember it wasn't, because in your article, Dan, you say that people like Michelle Obama and Albert Einstein had imposter syndrome. But I can't remember if it was Michelle Obama or Barack Obama who said that actually when you are elected president of the United States, everybody's an imposter because you haven't done it before. I mean, the first time you haven't done it, you haven't got a clue, you have no idea how it works. And at the end of the first 4 years, you may have a clue depending on which president you are. Some don't, but anyway, so you may, but when you start, you are by it the own nature. No one just had a trial run of being a president. No one's, do you know what I mean? So it's actually quite normal if you think about it, that you don't know how something is done before you actually do it. So in a way, it's fine. And another really interesting thing, when I started giving talks, which, sorry, it feels like I'm jumping, but I'm not when I'm finished this, because there's the other side to it. So when I started giving talks, which seemed like a really good idea at the time, and then as you were saying earlier, Laura, you just get on stage and you go, why do I do this to myself? Why? And I have a very close friend who is a university professor, and she's used to, when she goes and gives talks, maybe there's definitely hundreds of people, sometimes thousands in the room. And I asked her, how do you feel? Why do you feel nervous? What do you do? And she said, no, I never feel nervous because it's always about sharing what I know and what I'm passionate about with other people. And I thought, oh, that's a good way of looking at it. So instead of like feeling embarrassed, perfectionist, all those things that we were mentioning, you just think, I am sharing and I'm doing my best, which is also the connection is that's what either Michelle, let's say it was Michelle Obama said, is that you just go and you do your best. And that's how you deal with it, because you just think, okay, I don't quite know how to do this, but I'm going to do my best and I'm going to share and do my best to make things better for other people, to give something to other people, which is also what you're doing when you're giving a talk. So I feel like, to me, that was incredibly helpful to look at it like that. And now I'm always reminding myself, whenever I do one of these webinars, whenever I do a course, when I do an online lesson, masterclass, whatever, I just remind myself, I'm only doing my best, and I'm sharing what I'm passionate about with other people who may find it, who hopefully will find it interesting and benefit from it. So that's another way of doing it.
Absolutely. Whenever we I have a lot of conversations with individuals that are considering speaking at events, and that conversation of, I'm nervous, it's not something I've ever done before, or the idea of standing up in front of a room of people, I always give the same advice. What is the subject that you are passionate about, and talk about that. Take something that you use that as your starting point, and work from there, because if you're going to try and talk about something that you're not particularly familiar with, then it isn't going to work particularly well. But if you've got that passion, it just shines through.
I think I need to change my talk then for the upcoming WordCamp London and talk about Disney, because I am very passionate about Disney. Is that okay?
But your event, Lee, the agency Agency Transformation Live 2019, the talk that I gave, I was trying to force something, and I knew that, and I knew it on stage. I knew it as I was giving it, and I wasn't able to give the best that I could, because it wasn't something that it was coming from it was coming from a place of heart, but it wasn't something that I could just go straight into, and there was a deep passion behind it, because it was quite a formal style that I needed to give.
Well, it was a difficult conversation, to be honest, wasn't it, as well? It was quite emotive. There was a lot of people I saw, crying, which was a good thing. You did a good talk, but I get what you mean. You couldn't throw yourself in and relax, because you felt that pressure to deliver something that was kind of beyond just a passion. It was actually quite serious, especially given what had happened recently as well, with the loss of one of the community members, etc. as well. So yeah, I get that. But you're totally right with regards to the being able to show up, being passionate about what you love to do rather than forcing it, etc.
So that's why we're here, because we're passionate about embarrassing ourselves and kicking into imposter syndrome.
It is healthy. It is healthy to have imposter syndrome. It becomes unhealthy when our life is governed by it, and when it comes to when we are in a situation where we are paralyzed by it, then obviously it becomes that's where we need to start reaching out for support. Start reaching out to some form of support network to look for ways to deal with it.
And they can do that via bigorangeheart.org/join. Carry on, Laura.
Sorry. Something that I've been trying really recently, I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, but I find it really helpful if you don't have a team around you, especially now where we're all remote working, or maybe you're self-employed or run your own business, and struggle to find people who maybe you can celebrate your achievements with. Or I have this thing where I feel really, although I'm part of the team, we're all across the world. I have no one else in the UK. Obviously, I'm not seeing anybody at the moment. And I'm the only marketing person in a team full of developers again. So I don't really have anyone to kind of share, whilst they'll be happy for me if I increase our page ranking in Google, they're not going to really understand. And that's why I've had to really train myself to give me that sort of feeling of achievement and productivity. So at the end of every day, I write an email to myself listing everything I've done, and it helps. It's been helping so much, because I'm not sure about you guys, but every day at the moment almost feels like exactly the same, and I'm really struggling to figure out what I did on Tuesday, even what day it is. And by doing this, I am giving myself that little sense of achievement. I can finish the day feeling productive, and also, again, like back to what I said earlier about that little folder of good things I've done. It doesn't even have to be anything totally amazing. It can be just getting through the week and finishing a decent amount of work or feeling productive. That's been really helpful.
Absolutely. I live by this to-do list. And at the end of the day, being able to cross things off and reading what it is that I'm crossing off and going, I have sent the plan to Liam. I have done that invoice that I've been putting off for the last 3 days. I have reviewed that website. It's nice to know what you've done. I like what you say about the email, because this paper will eventually get thrown away, but at least I could actually go to a date and go, what did I do last Monday? I felt really unproductive. I like what you're saying about the email idea.
Yeah, I have a list.
Well,
too.
put them in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
Cookies.
Yeah, some form of micro journaling can be really productive, really supportive.
There's an app for that, folks. It's called Daily-O. It's flipping amazing, and you can set goals. So, for example, I've got mine. I've been micro-journaling now for like 600 or 700 days. I've lost count. And you can set yourself goals either daily or on certain days. So, for example, I have been reading my Bible now for 514 days in a row. So the sense of achievement I feel right now in that, having never read it fully ever until now, is pretty darn cool. So micro journaling, there's loads of other apps, but I'll put a link to this in the comments. Daily-O, for anyone who can't spend the time to write an entire email like Laura, but can at least celebrate with some sort of micro journaling. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll shut up whilst I find the link. Carry on, guys.
But it really helps if you work in like big projects as well, because like you're saying, phase 1 or 2, whatever's complete, and often that isn't done in a day. So you can sometimes feel like you've been unproductive because you haven't completed an entire project, where it's not, I know this is the perfectionist in me speaking, I can tell, having tied something off really neatly, but you're still being productive and you're still achieving things. They're just smaller parts of the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think. Sorry, then go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it can become a cycle, can't it, with imposter syndrome? It prevents you from doing one thing, and then you start to try and work your way through it, and you think, well, last time I did it by doing this, and you almost end up getting into a situation where you think, well, if I do that again, I'll be able to get through it, and that can be really unhealthy. So just trying to break that cycle, and something like microjournaling can really help with that, because you're actually bullet point things that actually have helped and actually got you through it.
Yeah. And also what I was going to add is you have to take care for yourself sometimes, because it's easy, especially these days, that you lose yourself in work like I did. And what I'm doing now is I'm committing to working out 4 times a week. Just 30-40 minutes or something, but that really helps me stay sane mentally, because it relieves a lot of stress for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, physical exercise, any kind of form of physical exercise is just incredibly positive in this situation.
Well, folks, we are coming into land now. Could I have either Dan or Laura tell us a little bit about the mental well-being health? Have I written that down? Well-being and mental health survey of 2020. Who wants to take this one?
You go for it, Dan. You're the man in charge.
So yes, it's actually the 2020 Wellbeing and Mental Health Survey for remote workers. It's a survey that we've launched. We actually launched for the first time last year. So this is an annual survey. We are going to be open sourcing the anonymized data. If you are currently remote working, as so many of us are, then please do visit big.ht/2020. That will take you to a survey, which you may never have completed a survey in this format before.
It's great.
It
it's
will
great
take
UX. Really, really good.
Take you around 3 minutes to complete. It's entirely anonymous. We're not looking to collect any identifiable data through the process. And off the back of the data that we collected from the survey last year, we actually adapted the services that we delivered through Big Orange Heart. We increased our suicide awareness and suicide prevention training within the team. And we are aware of individuals that are with us today that had gone through that, had received that training. So the data that we collect is literally saving lives. So please, if you can, donate 3 minutes of your time, big.ht/2020.
That's good. And also, folks, you can support multiple ways, obviously financially, etc. But you can also support using this cool little tweet option, which is big.ht/2020 tweets. Is that right?
That's the one, yes.
That will generate a tweet, and that will give you a framework, or at least a post that you could repurpose and use across all social media to share with your own audience. And remember to join in the community over on bigorangeheart.org/join. And in the menu, you'll see lots of other options and lots of ways that you can support. So, folks, as we come into land, first of all, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. Thank you for everyone who commented. We see your comments. They're wonderful. There's been a lot of honesty in there. Let's carry on this conversation. So if you're watching the replay, welcome. Tap in the word replay, let us know you watched, and still continue to share with us your biggest takeaways and what you learned as well. I think the biggest takeaway for me was Dan's Mr. Miyagi moment earlier on when he said perfection is an enemy of completion, and my mind imploded. So thank you very much for that, Dan. So before we go, let's go round the room so that we can learn how to connect with each one of us, and then we'll do the awkward wave. Let's start with Laura.
Oh, okay. So you can find me on Twitter, Laura_Nelson_. I'm always open to having a chat about mental health or anything else. And if you want to just share your achievements with someone, I'm here. I will celebrate you. Please do get in touch. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't know. Yeah, Big Orange Heart. I'm on the Slack there. If you'd rather have a more private discussion, yeah, feel free to reach out and chat to me.
How about you, Dan?
If you want to connect with me personally, it's pretty much anything /Dan Maby, DANMABY. Again,
MySpace
DMs are open. Yes, everything. Very happy to have conversations, both privately and in a more secure way. Should you want to, over on Big Orange Heart, if you need to get hold of Big Orange Heart, it's again pretty much anything /Big Orange Heart.
That's awesome. How about you, Jan?
The best place to connect with me is my Facebook group, WP Mastery.
Peter?
My Facebook group, Design for Geeks, but I'm also in the Big Orange Heart Slack. And on Twitter, I'm so proud of my handle. It's @Picha. That's it. PICCIA. That's
pretty cool.
Twitter. Yeah.
Folks, you can connect with me over on agencytrailblazer.com. All the links are in there for you to consume the podcast or join the community. And what I would also encourage everybody to do, if you're not part of the Cloudways users group, then please do go ahead, check that out. Just tap in Cloudways space users into Facebook and come and join the community. Talking about community as well, one last reminder to join the community over at Big Orange Heart. Great Slack community, many services, especially if you are a remote worker, you're struggling with mental health, loneliness, any of that, then please do get involved. Reminder as well to read Dan's blog, big.ht/imposter, all about imposter syndrome. If you can, give us a tweet and support the community. And finally, donate some of your time to get involved in the Wellbeing and Mental Health Survey. All that is left for us to do is to say thank you so much to both Laura and Dan for joining us. Thank you to my fellow Mavericks for being involved. And thank you to Cloudways for giving us all a platform to share. Now it's time for the awkward wave.